While the world celebrated Christmas morning with joy and laughter, inside a wealthy Colorado home, something unspeakable was unfolding. A 2-year-old girl Ramsey found dead in the basement, a garrote around her neck, her wrists bound, a haunting ransom note left behind. There was no forced entry, no broken windows, no sign of a struggle. So how did the killer get in? Worse, what if they never had to? If you think you know this case, think again, because what you're about to see will shake your understanding to its core. Buried evidence, overlooked clues, and hidden truths. A 6-year-old girl's death remains cloaked in mystery. Where is the truth? Will the killer ever be caught? In this series, we uncover every layer, every clue, every chilling chapter of the Ramsey case. If you want to know the truth, stay with us. Watch the video all the way through, because each moment takes you closer to the terrifying truth that still hides in the shadows. Don't skip. The truth often reveals itself at the very end. Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990, in Atlanta, Georgia, to John and Patricia Patsy Ramsey. She was the youngest of 2 children. Growing up with her older brother Burke, the family moved to Boulder, Colorado, where John was a successful businessman and the president of Access Graphics, a computer services company that would go on to earn over $1 billion in revenue. Patsy, a former beauty queen herself, took pride in entering her daughter into child pageants, where quickly gained attention for her poise, stage presence, and beauty. Was not just a pageant queen, she was a vibrant, energetic, and charismatic. Videos from the time show a boobly child in tiaras and makeup, singing and smiling, often cheered on by her proud mother. But behind that glitter and gold, something sinister would soon unravel, and the world would never forget her name, not because of her smile, but because of the way she died. Christmas Day at the Ramsey household was, by all accounts, festive and traditional. The family had attended a party at a friend's house on the night of December 20th and returned home sometime after 9 p.m. Was reportedly asleep when they arrived, and John carried her to bed. The next morning, December 26, 1996, Patsy Ramsey awoke just after 5 a.m. She intended to start the day early to prepare for a planned trip to Michigan. But as she descended the spiral staircase of their Boulder mansion, something caught her eye on the steps. A 2.5-page handwritten ransom note. The words were chilling. Her 6-year-old daughter had been kidnapped. The note demanded $118,000 in exchange for a safe return, an oddly specific sum that matched a recent bonus John had received at work. The note was signed SB, a mysterious and never-explained acronym. Patsy screamed and called 911. Her voice, panicked and trembling, was recorded in what would become one of the most analyzed 911 calls in true crime history. She said her daughter had been kidnapped. There was a ransom note, and begged police to come quickly. Within minutes, officers arrived. But something critical happened, or rather, didn't happen. From the very start, the investigation was plagued with errors. Instead of treating the home as a potential crime scene, police allowed friends and family to walk freely throughout the house. Evidence was unintentionally destroyed or contaminated. The ransom note itself was handled by Patsy, passed around, and placed on the kitchen counter. No fingerprints or DNA were immediately recovered from it. Officers initially focused on the kidnapping scenario and did not search the house thoroughly. That changed hours later. At 1:05 p.m., several hours after police had arrived, Detective Linda Arndt suggested that John Ramsey and a family friend search the house from top to bottom. In the basement's small, windowless wine cellar room, John made a horrifying discovery: a lifeless body. She was lying on the floor, covered with a white blanket. Her mouth was bound with duct tape. A cord was wrapped tightly around her neck in a makeshift garrote with a broken paintbrush used as a handle. Her wrists had been bound. There was clear evidence of a struggle, trauma to the head, and signs of strangulation. John picked up her body and brought her upstairs. A heartbreaking act, but also one that potentially compromised vital forensic evidence. The room was not immediately secured as a secondary crime scene. From that moment forward, the case shifted from a possible kidnapping to a full-blown homicide. The autopsy revealed had suffered a blunt force trauma to the head and had been strangled with a ligature. There were signs of possible sexual assault, though this was never officially confirmed in a legal sense. The garrote used in the murder was likely fashioned from materials found in the home, including a paintbrush from Patsy's art supplies. The cause of death was ruled as asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. That means she was both strangled and struck in the head. The brutality shocked investigators. The fact that she died in her own home, just feet from her sleeping family members, made it all the more chilling. From the very beginning, 2 main theories began to form. 1, someone inside the house was responsible. 2, an intruder had broken in and committed the crime. But neither theory was airtight. The house had no signs of forced entry. Doors and windows were locked. There were no footprints in the snow surrounding the home, no signs of someone escaping. Yet, the handwritten ransom note, nearly 3 pages long, suggested someone had taken their time. Even more disturbing, investigators later concluded that the note may have been written using paper and a pen from inside the Ramsey home. Handwriting analysis did not match John's, and Patsy's results were inconclusive. As suspicion swirled, attention began turning inward toward the family themselves. Every minute of this video contains hidden facts that were buried for decades. If you miss even one detail, you could miss the entire truth. So don't blink, don't skip. Stay with us till the end. What you're about to see has never been fully revealed. Until now, after the shock of Ramsey's murder, the initial investigation spiraled into confusion. What began as a potential kidnapping soon turned into a full-blown homicide with no clear suspect, no forced entry, and the horrifying realization that whoever killed may have already been inside the house. The Boulder Police Department, desperate for leads, began looking inward at the only people known to be in the house that night: John Ramsey, Patsy Ramsey, and their 9-year-old son, Burke. From here, the investigation would descend into one of the most controversial and scrutinized in modern American criminal history. In the days following S. murder, the Ramseys' public behavior began to draw criticism. Many expected the grieving parents to cooperate closely with law enforcement. Instead, they hired criminal defense attorneys within days, gave limited access to investigators, and avoided direct questioning. To outsiders, this felt suspicious. Patsy Ramsey, particularly, attracted attention for her emotional, sometimes theatrical interviews. Observers claimed her grief seemed exaggerated, almost performative. Others disagreed, saying she was a devastated mother, being judged for not grieving correctly in the public eye. John Ramsey was more restrained. His demeanor in interviews was calm, even to some, this was a sign of composure under stress. To others, it looked cold and controlled. The 911 call made by Patsy Ramsey on the morning of December 26th would become a major focal point for suspicion. In the call, she screamed about a kidnapping and a ransom note, but years later, forensic audio specialists enhanced the final seconds of the call after Patsy believed the call had ended. In that faint audio, some experts claimed they heard 3 voices: Patsy saying, "What did you do?" John saying, "We're not speaking to you." Burke, the 9-year-old, saying something unintelligible. This revelation raised disturbing questions. The Ramseys had claimed Burke was asleep throughout the entire event. If he was awake and present during the 911 call, that would be a direct contradiction. To this day, the audio remains debated. Some experts say the voices are clear. Others claim it's nothing but noise. By early 1997, the media had firmly turned on the Ramseys. Headlines speculated. Did the parents kill? Ramseys hiding behind lawyers. Burke, the silent witness. Tabloids dissected every interview, every facial expression, every word. Television pundits debated their guilt and pride. A nation became obsessed, and the Ramseys were caught in the center of it all. John and Patsy made a calculated decision. Instead of talking to police, they spoke directly to the public. On January 1st, 1997, they appeared on CNN. Patsy begged, "Greater than there is a killer on the loose. We don't want anyone else to be hurt." Too many. This sounded odd. Why warn the public about a killer if the crime scene showed no signs of a break-in? Why assume an intruder? Critics believed the Ramseys were crafting a narrative, shifting the focus outward before police could focus inward. In 1999, a Boulder County grand jury was secretly convened to examine the case and potential charges. After months of testimony and review of the evidence, the grand jury reportedly voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death and accessory to murder. But in a shocking twist, the district attorney at the time, Alex Hunter, refused to sign the indictment. He believed there was insufficient evidence to secure a conviction. The public wasn't even aware of the grand jury's vote until 2013, when unsealed documents revealed what had happened. Too many. This was the ultimate betrayal of justice. A grand jury had believed the Ramseys should be charged, but politics, influence, and legal caution stood in the way. Burke Ramsey, just 9 years old at the time of his sister's death, remained largely out of the spotlight in the early years. He was interviewed by child psychologists but was not formally interrogated by police until much later. Had Burke accidentally killed in a fit of childish anger? Did the parents cover it up to protect their only remaining child? Was the ransom note a way to stage a fake kidnapping to throw off suspicion? Supporters of this theory pointed to S. autopsy, which showed undigested pineapple in his stomach. A bowl of pineapple with Burke's fingerprints was found in the kitchen. Yet John and Patsy claimed had gone straight to bed that night. Burke, in his later adult interview with Dr. Phil, dismissed these theories as absurd and painful. "I know people think I did it. That's not true. I loved my sister." But the public fascination with Burke has never fully faded. Another reason the case grew so muddled was the deep division between the Boulder Police Department and the district attorney. Officer police believed the family was guilty. The DA believed the evidence was too weak. At times, the two sides refused to share information, didn't cooperate on subpoenas, and leaked damaging stories to the press. This lack of unity severely compromised the investigation. When the prosecution doesn't trust the police and vice versa, cases collapse. Over time, the DA's office grew more sympathetic toward the Ramseys. In 2008, newly elected District Attorney Mary Lacey issued an official letter clearing John, Patsy, and Burke of all suspicion, citing DNA evidence that did not match any of them. That DNA found on S underwear has been a cornerstone of the case. It was male DNA, not belonging to John Burke or anyone in the family. To many, this was the ultimate proof that an intruder had killed, but others argue that the DNA was touch DNA, possibly transferred during manufacturing or packaging. It was not semen, and it wasn't found anywhere else meaningful on her body. In short, it proved nothing conclusively. It didn't belong to the Ramseys, but it didn't necessarily belong to the killer either. Still, it was enough for the DA's office to publicly exonerate the family. In 2006, after a long battle with ovarian cancer, Patsy Ramsey died at age 49. Until her final days, she maintained her innocence, pleading for her daughter's killer to be brought to justice. Her death marked a sad chapter in the case. One of the most visible and controversial figures was now gone, and no justice had been achieved. For some, her death added to the tragedy. For others, it felt like the case had died with her. To this day, people remain deeply divided over the Ramseys' role. Group belief: family did it. They staged the scene to protect Burke or cover up a tragic accident. Intruder did it. The DNA proves it. The family was rich and eccentric, but not murderers. Police failed. The case was bungled from day one, and no one will ever know the truth. The Ramsey case is more than just a murder mystery. It's a mirror, one that reflects how easily public perception can be swayed by emotion, wealth, media, and fear. In the next episode, we'll explore the leading theories, both official and bizarre. Did Burke accidentally kill? Was there a pedophile ring involved? What about the Santa Claus suspect? Or the disturbed schoolteacher who confessed only to be proven a liar? By 1997, Ramsey's murder had become more than just a criminal investigation. It had become a national obsession. And with no clear suspect, no confession, and no arrest, the vacuum left behind was quickly filled with something else. Theories. Over the years, countless investigators, journalists, amateur sleuths, and even internet conspiracy theorists have tried to answer one question: who killed Ramsey? Despite all the confusion, most theories fall into three major categories. 1. The parents did it. 2. Burke did it, and the parents covered it up. 3. An unknown intruder committed the crime. Let's examine each in depth and the disturbing details that support or challenge them. This is the theory that dominated the early days of the investigation and shaped the public's opinion of the case for years. The idea was simple: one or both parents either accidentally or intentionally killed and then staged the crime scene to look like a kidnapping gone wrong. According to this theory, may have wet the bed or misbehaved on Christmas night. Patsy, already under pressure and struggling emotionally, may have reacted violently in a moment of rage. She hit, not intending to kill her, but caused fatal head trauma. In a panic, the parents then constructed a complex cover-up to protect themselves and their son. Burke. The ransom note remains the strongest piece of circumstantial evidence for this theory. It was written on paper from inside the house, using a pen from Patsy's writing area. The amount demanded, $118, matched John Ramsey's Christmas bonus exactly. The tone and length of the note were highly unusual for a kidnapping. Many believe the note sounds more like someone trying to sound like a kidnapper than an actual one. Multiple handwriting experts examined the note. John was ruled out. Patsy's results were inconclusive. Some said it was likely her writing. Others said it was not definitive. Critics also point to the Ramseys' behavior. Why didn't Patsy notice her daughter was missing until finding the note? Why didn't the family search the house first? Why did John discover the body in the basement hours after police were already present? Some believe John already knew where the body was. Others suggest Patsy panicked and staged the strangulation with the garrote after the initial head injury. But this theory has serious weaknesses too. There is no physical evidence tying the parents to the murder. No blood, no DNA, no fingerprints. The autopsy showed blunt force trauma followed by strangulation. But if it was an accidental death, why add such an elaborate staging? And above all, what kind of parents would go this far to fake a kidnapping and sexually stage their own daughter's body? That's a level of depravity many experts say doesn't fit the Ramseys' profile. This theory emerged more publicly years later, especially after the CBS documentary aired in 2016. It proposes that Burke Ramsey, age 9 at the time, may have struck in anger, possibly with a flashlight or heavy object, and the parents covered it up to protect their only surviving child. One of the strangest clues from the case: during the autopsy, undigested pineapple was found in S's stomach, yet John and Patsy claimed she went straight to bed after the Christmas party. But a bowl of pineapple was found on the kitchen table with Burke's fingerprints on it. Supporters of this theory suggest may have tried to eat Burke's pineapple, leading to a sudden fight in the kitchen. He struck her, perhaps with the flashlight found at the scene. Her skull was fractured. She fell unconscious or died. The parents then constructed the rest of the crime scene to protect Burke from being taken away. Burke was interviewed by child psychologists in the weeks after the murder. He appeared calm, disconnected, even smiling at times, but child behavior can be unpredictable in trauma. In 2016, Burke gave a rare public interview with Dr. Phil, where he denied involvement and expressed frustration at being seen as a suspect. but critics noted his awkward smile and flat tone. Some believed it showed guilt. Others believed it showed trauma and nervousness. Could a 9-year-old tie a garrote that precisely? Would his parents really stage a sexualized crime scene to protect him? No history of violence or behavioral issues was ever documented. The Burke theory is compelling in pieces but deeply disturbing when fully played out. The third and perhaps most widely accepted among law enforcement today is that an intruder broke into the house, sexually assaulted, and murdered, then left the ransom note to delay the discovery. This theory gained strength in the early 2000s when unknown male DNA was found on underwear and leggings. That DNA did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. Critics of the intruder theory point out there was no sign of forced entry. However, a broken basement window was found. John admitted he had broken it weeks earlier to gain access. Could the killer have used it? Some believe the killer hid in the house during the Christmas party or snuck in late at night, perhaps was taken from her bed, abused, and then killed before the note was written. One of the most bizarre sub-theories involves a man named Bill McReynolds who had played Santa Claus at a party attended by days before her death. He reportedly brought her glitter and said she was special. His wife had even written a play years earlier involving the strangling of a child. These coincidences were deeply unsettling, but there was no evidence linking him to the crime. Police questioned and cleared him. In 2006, a man named John Mark Carr shocked the world by confessing to killing. He claimed he had drugged, assaulted, and accidentally killed her, but there were huge problems with his story. No drugs were found in S's system. His DNA didn't match the crime scene. He couldn't confirm key details not known to the public. It turned out he had an obsession with the case and was likely seeking attention or worse, fantasizing about child harm. Authorities dropped all charges. Still, the incident showed just how desperate the world was for closure. As the years passed, the internet gave rise to hundreds of unproven and bizarre theories that never died and became pop star Katy Perry. That a secret pedophile ring in Boulder was being protected, that a housekeeper, disgruntled or obsessed, was involved, that foreign factions targeted John Ramsey through his work. None of these theories had credible evidence, yet the case attracted conspiracy like a magnet because it had all the ingredients: a rich family, a murdered child, a botched investigation, and a crime scene that made no sense. The FBI's original profile leaned toward an inside job. They believed the note was staged, and the killer likely knew the family. But forensic pathologists are split. Some believe the DNA exonerates the family. Others think it's a red herring. Most agree on one thing: the investigation was so compromised, it may never be solved. Each theory has compelling points and glaring weaknesses. Theory, strengths, weaknesses. Parents did it. Note: behavior, staging, no physical evidence. Extreme cover-up. Burke did it. Pineapple clue. Motive, age, complexity of crime scene. Intruder did it. Unknown DNA. Possible entry, no footprints. Very risky crime. The truth is, no theory explains everything, and that's why this case still grips the world. As the dust of media chaos began to settle in the early 2000s, a new question emerged: had science advanced enough to reveal the truth about Ramsey's murder? The Boulder Police Department had taken heavy criticism. They were accused of mishandling evidence, allowing the crime scene to be contaminated, and failing to preserve key forensic material. With pressure mounting and leads growing colder, investigators turned to forensic science as their last hope for answers. And in many ways, DNA would become both the promise and the paradox of the entire Ramsey case. Let's go back to the morning of December 20th. That day was a disaster. Dozens of people were allowed to walk through the home. The body was moved before being properly photographed. Items were touched, misplaced. Even cleaned key areas weren't cordoned off. Evidence was bagged improperly. No photos were taken of the exact position of the body when first discovered. What this meant was simple: the crime scene was compromised beyond repair. And yet, remarkably, some DNA survived. During the autopsy, trace DNA was found in 2 key places: inside S underwear on the waistband of her long johns. This unknown male DNA did not match John, Patsy, or Burke. It also didn't match anyone in the law enforcement database at the time. This led to 2 interpretations. 1. The intruder theory was, correct, someone outside the family had been in contact with S clothing. 2. Or the DNA was the result of lab contamination, clothing factory residue, or secondary transfer. Experts were divided. For some, it was the smoking gun. For others, a red herring. In 2002, after years of friction, the case was taken away from the Boulder Police Department and handed to the District Attorney's office under Mary Lacey. Lacey's approach was different. She leaned heavily toward the intruder theory and believed the Ramseys had been unfairly targeted. Her team focused on the DNA as the clearest path to resolution. They retested the samples using improved technology, short tandem repeat profiling, which allowed identification from tiny amounts of genetic material. The results were the same: male DNA, still unidentified, consistent in both clothing samples. Lacey made a controversial decision. In early Shore, years after S' death, District Attorney Mary Lacey wrote a public letter to John Ramsey. Greater than we believe that you are completely cleared by this DNA evidence. No one in your family is considered a suspect in this case. The letter shocked many in the legal community. For the first time, a DA had publicly exonerated a suspect based solely on partial DNA. And in a case with multiple questionable factors, critics argued this was an overreach, that DNA alone should not rule out the Ramseys, especially when the origin of that DNA was still unclear. Still, the Ramseys were finally officially removed from the suspect list. But justice remained elusive. As technology advanced, investigators began using a new forensic technique. Touch DNA allows scientists to extract genetic material from surfaces that have merely been touched, such as fabric, skin, or objects, without the need for visible biological material like blood or saliva. Using this method, scientists reanalyzed clothing and fingernails. Again, a male DNA profile was found, but it was very partial, degraded, and difficult to match to any individual in law enforcement databases. Critics raised a serious point. Modern clothing manufacturing often involves multiple workers. Could the DNA have come from a factory worker who handled her clothes before they were even purchased? The question grew louder. Is this the killer's DNA or just meaningless noise? In 2016, on the 20th anniversary of S. death, CBS aired a controversial documentary titled The Case of Ramsey. It featured former FBI and police investigators who reconstructed the crime using forensics, psychology, and staging tests. The program leaned heavily toward the Burke theory, suggesting that was killed by Burke during a sibling conflict. The parents staged the scene afterward. The ransom note was written by Patsy. This sparked immediate backlash. The documentary reignited public interest but also drew legal consequences. Burke Ramsey filed a $750 million defamation lawsuit against CBS and the participants. The case was settled out of court, but CBS reportedly paid a significant amount. While the show used forensic analysis, it also underscored how easily forensics can be used to support multiple narratives, depending on how the evidence is framed. Let us take a closer look at the most cited forensic clue: the foreign male DNA found on S. underwear and long johns. Supporters of the intruder theory point to this as clear proof of an outside attacker, but skeptics, including many forensic scientists, highlight key problems. DNA can be transferred indirectly. Someone could have handled the fabric in the factory or store. Multiple mixtures. Some samples contained a mixture of genetic material, making clear identification difficult. The DNA was not found on her body, only on clothing. In other words, the DNA was inconclusive. It didn't prove guilt, but it also didn't exonerate anyone. One FBI agent put it bluntly: DNA is a powerful tool, but it can't solve a case on its own. It's part of a larger puzzle. In recent years, independent experts reanalyzed the autopsy report. Had a blunt force trauma to the head enough to render her unconscious or kill her. She was also stranguled with a garrote, suggesting intentional murder. There were signs of vaginal injury, but no definitive evidence of rape. This led some investigators to theorize that the strangulation was staged, done after she was already unconscious, to simulate a more sadistic motive. Others argue it was part of the actual cause of death. Again, forensics didn't provide answers, only more questions. By the mid-2010s, forensic tech had evolved dramatically. Mitochondrial DNA could now be extracted from degraded samples. Familial DNA allowed for broader database matches. Advanced forensic genealogy solved decades-old cold cases, including the Golden State Killer, and yet S case remained stuck because the DNA profile available was too partial, too degraded, and too uncertain. There simply wasn't enough clean, usable DNA left to perform modern forensic genealogy without risk of false leads. Bolder investigators claimed they were still working with outside labs to examine remaining samples, but few concrete updates emerged. Today, the remaining evidence in the Ramsey case includes clothing and bedding, hair and fiber samples, unused portions of the ransom note, the flashlight, duct tape and ligature. Some experts believe that using next-generation sequencing or whole genome amplification, tiny amounts of remaining DNA could still provide breakthroughs. Others are more skeptical, saying the evidence is too old, too contaminated, or too compromised. But there is still hope if Boulder police are willing to submit the case to independent labs with more advanced tools. One of the most frustrating realities of the case is how much of the investigation remains sealed. Grand jury records, interview transcripts, complete autopsy documentation, lab reports from early testing. These materials are locked away by the Boulder District Attorney's Office. Efforts by journalists and citizen investigators to unseal them have been largely unsuccessful. Critics argue that transparency could unlock new leads, while authorities say protecting the integrity of the case and Ramsey family is more important. In many ways, the Ramsey case is a tragic example of how forensics alone cannot solve a crime when everything else is broken. The crime scene was compromised, key evidence was mishandled, investigators fought among themselves, politics influenced prosecution decisions. Even the best forensic tools need a stable foundation to work from, and, in this case, That foundation never existed. The Ramsey case continues to be studied in law schools, forensic science courses, and criminology programs worldwide, not just for its tragedy, but for what went wrong. It serves as a cautionary tale of the dangers of early tunnel vision, the importance of preserving a crime scene, the limits of DNA as a standalone solution, the role of media in shaping justice. Ramsey would be 34 years old today, but to the world she remains forever. 6. Dressed in glittering pageant gowns, her image haunting television screens, magazine covers, and internet forums for over 2 decades. Her murder wasn't just a tragedy, it was a mirror held up to American society. It reflected the dark underbelly of media obsession, judicial failure, and our collective fascination with them. Now, 25 years later, we ask, what do we really know about what happened that night? And will we ever know the truth? Let's review the core. Undisputed facts: was found dead in her home's basement. On December 26, 1996, a ransom note was discovered hours before her body. There was no forced entry. She died from a combination of strangulation and a severe head injury. There were signs of vaginal trauma, but no conclusive evidence of sexual assault. An unknown male DNA profile was found on her clothing. No one has ever been charged. These facts are chilling, but also deeply incomplete. Everything else, from motive to method to perpetrator, is tangled in contradiction. In 1999, a grand jury was convened to consider evidence against the Ramseys. After months of testimony, they voted to indict both John and Patsy Ramsey for child endangerment and obstruction. They believed the parents may have allowed to be placed in a dangerous situation that led to a death, even if they didn't kill her. But District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign the indictment. He claimed the evidence didn't meet the burden of proof for a conviction. This decision remained secret for over a decade, until the indictment was finally unsealed in 2013. To this day, we don't know why the DA overrode the jury's decision. It's a stunning example of how justice can be quietly deferred behind closed doors. In recent years, the true crime world has seen breakthrough after breakthrough in cold cases. The Golden State Killer was identified using forensic genealogy. Countless 1980s murders have been solved using minute DNA fragments. New databases and AI-powered search tools have reshaped criminal investigations. And yet, SK's remains frozen. Why? Because the male DNA sample collected is partial, possibly contaminated, lacking in sufficient genetic markers for familial matching. Cutting-edge tools can't force clarity from compromised material. The case is stuck in a kind of forensic limbo, where science can't disprove, but also can't confirm, the intruder theory. One of the most frustrating realities about the Ramsey case is how much information remains sealed or hidden. Full forensic reports, complete interviews with family members, original audio recordings of 911 calls, internal police memos, grand jury testimony. Boulder Police and the District Attorney's Office have long refused to release these documents. They cite the need to protect the integrity of the case. Even 25 years later, critics say this lack of transparency has hindered progress. Some even believe the truth may already be buried in those sealed files. The case was one of the first American crimes to be amplified by 24-hour cable news and sensationalized beyond recognition. The media painted Patsy Ramsey as an overbearing pageant mom, scrutinized John Ramsey's wealth and stoicism, turned Burke Ramsey into a mystery. Later, a suspect reported rumors as fact and fiction as possibility. The pressure on law enforcement to find a villain was immense. This arguably led to early tunnel vision, confirmation bias, and a rushed focus on the family. Over the years, documentaries, podcasts, and YouTube videos have offered hundreds of competing theories, some thoughtful, some reckless. The result, a public that is both overexposed to the case and no closer to the truth. After decades of discussion, there are still common misunderstandings. 1. The DNA clears the Ramseys. Gives not conclusively. It doesn't match them, but its origin is unknown. It neither proves nor disproves their guilt. 2. There was no sign of an intruder. Gives not entirely true. A broken window in the basement suggests a possible entry point, but it's debated whether it was staged. 3. Burke was too young to be charged. Gives true, but under Colorado law, children under 10 are not criminally responsible. 4. The case is cold and forgotten. Gives false. The Boulder Police say they still consider the case open and periodically test evidence, though critics argue it's inactive in practice. Patsy Ramsey passed away from ovarian cancer in 2006. Until her death, she maintained her innocence and spoke publicly about the family's suffering. John Ramsey now lives a more private life. He has remarried, occasionally speaks out, and continues to push for renewed investigation using modern technology. Burke Ramsey, now an adult, rarely appears in public. He gave a controversial interview to Dr. Phil in 2016 and sued CBS over the documentary implicating him. The case was settled out of court. Despite being cleared by law enforcement, the Ramsey family has never fully escaped the shadow of suspicion, a burden that has lasted longer than S' entire life. Yes, but it would take releasing sealed files, submitting evidence to independent labs using forensic genealogy, if DNA permits, allowing full third-party reviews by outside investigators. There's also potential for someone with guilty knowledge to come forward, a confession. As the case continues to age, so do the people involved. Witnesses fade, memories weaken, but in cold cases, time can sometimes be an ally. As relationships end, guilt builds, or new technology emerges. The key is, someone has to keep asking questions. The murder of Ramsey had a massive ripple effect on American culture and criminal justice. It reshaped how media covers child murders. It exposed serious flaws in how police handle high-profile investigations. It demonstrated the dangers of public trial by It pushed forward forensic standards. Even if imperfectly, it created a new genre of citizen detectives, for better or worse. But most of all, it left a permanent scar. The face of a child whose life ended far too soon, and a mystery that still whispers in the American subconscious. S case isn't just about a murder. It's about what happens when justice is lost in confusion, when truth is buried under suspicion, fear, and failure, when the little girl becomes an icon of everything that can go wrong in a system meant to protect. And perhaps the most haunting part of it all, her killer might still walk free.